A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions. Marcus Aurelius. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like a stranger? Not because your face changed, but because something inside you dimmed, slowly, quietly, without permission. You used to walk with certainty, speak with conviction, laugh without hesitation, but now you hesitate. You calculate your words. You shrink just a little each time you speak your truth and it's met with silence. They didn't ask you to change, not directly, but their moods, their preferences, their judgments, they built a quiet prison. And you've been decorating the walls. You say it's love. You say all relationships require sacrifice, and that's true. But the Stoics knew there is a line between sacrifice and surrender, between compromise and self-erasure. The tragedy isn't that they left, it's that you did, long before they ever walked away. You left the room when your boundaries were crossed. You left the table when your needs became too much. You left yourself to keep someone else. But Marcus Aurelius would remind you, the only thing you control is your own mind. Not their love, not their loyalty, just your response, just your integrity, just your alignment with who you truly are. This is not about heartbreak. This is about homecoming, returning to yourself, and seeing with quiet clarity the signs that you've been disappearing. Let's begin. He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior, Confucius. It always starts with the small things. You cancel a plan with your friend because they needed you. You change the way you dress because they joked about your style. You hold back a thought because they're just not in the mood right now, and you tell yourself, it's no big deal. I'm just being considerate. But over time, the exceptions become your identity. You start to forget what you like, what you need, what you believe. Because you've been bending for so long, you don't even remember what it feels like to stand straight. That's how self-betrayal begins, not in one grand moment of giving up, but in 1,000 tiny moments of quiet compliance. Marcus Aurelius would say, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. But how often have you done the opposite, just to keep someone happy? And the truth is, that's not love. That's self-abandonment dressed up as devotion. You're not soft. You're not sensitive. You're not asking for too much. You're just forgetting that your voice matters too. And if you keep silencing it, soon you won't even hear it anymore. To thine own self be true. William Shakespeare. There's a moment, quiet, unspoken, when you realize you're apologizing for things you didn't do. Not because you were wrong, but because peace became more important than truth. You say sorry when you express a feeling. You say sorry when you set a boundary. You say sorry just for needing something. And maybe they never asked you to, but every time you brought up something real, they pulled away. Every time you spoke your heart, they sighed, rolled their eyes, or changed the subject. So you started editing yourself, not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. But you've been breaking quiet promises to yourself for weeks now. You told yourself you wouldn't let this happen again. You told yourself the next time you'd speak up sooner. You told yourself you'd stop walking on eggshells. And yet, here you are, choosing silence over conflict, choosing comfort over clarity, choosing their comfort over your truth. That's not kindness. That's self-abandonment. There is strength in softness, but only when it's chosen freely. When it's born from self-respect, not fear of rejection. If someone only stays when you're agreeable, if they only love the version of you that stays small, then they don't love you. They love control. Real love can handle the whole truth, and if yours can't, maybe it's not love after all. If you don't know what you want, you end up with a lot you don't. Chuck Palahniuk. There was a time you had vision. You could see the life you wanted, sharp, clear, full of movement and meaning. But lately, that vision feels blurry. Not because your dreams changed, but because you stopped chasing them. You used to write, or paint, or build, or train. There was something that lit you up, something that made you feel alive. But now, you wait. You wait for their schedule. You wait for their attention. You wait for a right moment that never seems to come. And in that waiting, you forget yourself. You shrink your dreams to avoid intimidating them. You delay your plans so they won't feel left behind. You dull your hunger so they stay comfortable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." But how can you be him when you've made someone else the center of your life? You've mistaken devotion for direction, and now you're orbiting someone else's gravity while your own path gathers dust. The truth? They may have never asked for that, but you gave it anyway because you thought that's what love meant. It doesn't. Love doesn't ask you to forget your fire. It doesn't ask you to go still so someone else can shine. It doesn't ask you to sacrifice purpose in the name of partnership. A real partner doesn't fear your ambition. They fuel it. So ask yourself, what have you stopped doing since they came into your life? And what part of you is still waiting for permission to come back? The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. Carl Jung. Let's go deeper. Not into what they said, but into what they never said. They never told you they were proud of you. Never looked you in the eye and said, "I see you. I admire the way you think, the way you carry yourself." Instead, they tolerated you. They accepted you, as long as you stayed in line, as long as you didn't challenge their worldview, as long as you didn't grow too fast, shine too bright, or ask for too much. And the worst part, you accepted that, because somewhere along the way, you started thinking love meant approval, that to be loved, you had to be less. Marcus Aurelius would say, a man should be upright, not kept upright. You shouldn't need someone to permit your worth. You shouldn't need applause to feel whole. You shouldn't need validation to keep breathing. But here you are, tied to a love that only feels safe when you're small, where your wins are ignored, your passions brushed aside, and your truth too inconvenient to be heard. That's not a relationship. That's a slow erosion of the self. You weren't made to be background noise in your own life. You weren't meant to be half-loved by someone too afraid to meet you at your full height. Real connection doesn't shrink you, it expands you. So if their presence in your life makes you feel like less of a man, ask yourself, are you truly in love? Or are you just addicted to being almost enough? He who is brave is free. Seneca. Freedom isn't always lost in chains. Sometimes it's lost in silence. You stop speaking up. You stop asking questions. You stop expressing how you feel, not because there's nothing to say, but because you've learned that honesty comes with a cost. You've tried to talk about the distance, tried to share how certain things hurt, tried to bring up the changes you feel but can't fully explain. And every time, they deflect, they dismiss, or worse, they turn it back on you. Suddenly, you're too sensitive. You're overthinking. You're the one ruining the moment. So you stop trying. You bottle it up. You choose fake peace over real connection. And over time, you forget what it feels like to be heard. Marcus Aurelius said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." But when every hard conversation turns into a battlefield, you start avoiding the path altogether. You choose comfort over truth until there's nothing real left to fight for. The truth is simple. If you can't speak freely, you're not in a relationship, you're in a performance. And it's exhausting, pretending things are fine, smiling through tension, editing your truth to keep the illusion alive. But love, real love, is brave. It invites the hard talks. It welcomes discomfort because it knows that's where growth lives. So ask yourself, when was the last time you said what you really felt and felt safe doing it? Because if your truth is always punished, then freedom isn't the only thing you've lost. You've lost yourself. Man conquers the world by conquering himself. Zeno of Citium. It's easy to miss the slow drift from presence to performance. You're still there, still showing up, but not as you, as who they need you to be. You laugh when you're hurting. You say, "I'm fine," when your chest is heavy. You become their rock, even when you're crumbling inside. And you tell yourself, this is what strong men do. They carry the weight. They hold the line. They protect the ones they love. But what about you? When was the last time someone asked how you're doing, and actually stayed long enough to listen? When did you last feel held, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, honestly? Stoicism doesn't mean becoming a wall. It means becoming unshakable because you faced your truth, not because you've buried it. Marcus Aurelius would remind you, do not be ashamed of help. It is your task to live according to nature, not to suffer it like a slave. But you've been suffering silently, carrying two people's emotional weight while yours goes unnoticed. You tell yourself it's noble, but noble doesn't mean invisible. It doesn't mean self-neglect in the name of loyalty. You were never meant to be her therapist, her savior, her emotional shelter, while you sit in the storm alone. Love isn't measured by how much pain you can endure quietly. It's measured by how much truth the relationship can hold. So ask yourself, is this connection giving to you or just taking from you? Because if you're the only one bleeding, it's not love. It's slow, elegant self-destruction. And no amount of quiet strength should cost you your soul. The only wealth which you will keep forever is the wealth you have given away. Marcus Aurelius. You've given your time, your energy, your loyalty, your best days. You've shown up when they didn't ask, stayed when they pushed you away. Loved them, not for who they pretended to be, but for who you hoped they would become. And what did you get in return? Moments, breadcrumbs, just enough to keep you hopeful, never enough to feel held. They say they care, they say you matter, but when it's time to prove it, they disappear. Plans get postponed, texts go unanswered, excuses get creative, and you start rationing your worth. You start wondering, maybe I am too much, maybe I just need to be more patient, maybe love is supposed to hurt a little. But here's the truth. Love that costs your dignity is not love. Affection that leaves you empty is not love. Waiting to be chosen when you've been giving everything is not love. Marcus Aurelius said, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and your soul is starting to fade. Not because you're weak, but because you've spent so long pouring into someone who never once stopped to ask if you were running dry. Real love replenishes. It fills you back. It doesn't make you feel like you're begging for a place in someone's life. So ask yourself, if you stopped giving today, would anything about this relationship survive tomorrow? Because love isn't proven in what you give. It's revealed in what they're willing to give back. You become what you give your attention to. There's a kind of ache that doesn't scream. It hums, quietly, constantly. The kind that creeps in when you're in a room with someone you love and still feel completely alone. They're beside you, but their mind is somewhere else. Their heart, unreachable. And their eyes, they don't search for you the way they used to. You bring something up, a thought, a worry, a hope, and they nod, smile politely. Then scroll back to their phone. You reach out emotionally and get met with silence. Not because they don't hear you, but because they no longer listen. And here's the part that breaks you. You remember how it used to be, when your voice lit something in them, when your presence meant more than just background noise. Now, you're tolerated, not treasured, present, but fading. Marcus Aurelius once said, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. But even the strongest minds wither when starved of connection. Even the most stoic hearts feel the weight of being emotionally invisible. This isn't about needing constant attention. It's about needing presence. Someone who actually looks at you when you speak. Someone who reaches back when you reach out. Someone who doesn't just occupy space, but shares it. So ask yourself, when was the last time you felt seen? Not just looked at, seen. If you have to keep reminding them that you're here, then maybe they left a long time ago, and you've just been holding the memory of a connection that stopped showing up a long time before you did. Love is a serious mental disease. Plato, there's a lie we tell ourselves that if we just love harder, if we're just more patient, more understanding, more forgiving, they'll finally see our worth. They'll finally choose us, fully, truly, without hesitation. So we wait. We wait for them to change. We wait for them to come back to who they were in the beginning. We wait for the version of them that made us feel like we were enough, but that version is gone. Or maybe it never truly existed. They make future plans, and you're not in them. They talk about their dreams, and you're not mentioned. They speak in I, never we. You've become background, an afterthought, the soft place they return to when life gets hard, but never build a life around. And still, you stay, because the fear of starting over feels heavier than the pain of being unseen. Marcus Aurelius would say, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But you've been giving your power away. One excuse, one delay, one false hope at a time. You tell yourself they're just busy. They're figuring things out. They need space. But the truth is simpler. They don't see you in their future because they're no longer rooted in your present. And you've been living off of potential, off of who they could become, off of what could be instead of what is. But potential doesn't hold your hand at night. It doesn't show up when you're hurting. It doesn't choose you day after day. Only presence does. Only commitment does. Only love does. The real kind. The hard kind. The kind that plans a life with you, not around you. So ask yourself, are you in love with a person, or are you in love with their potential? Because no matter how much you give, you can't build a future with someone who's already imagining one without you. Self-respect is the cornerstone of all virtue, John Herschel. There comes a point when your body is still in the relationship, but your spirit has already stepped out, not in rebellion, but in quiet resignation. You've asked, you've tried, you've waited, but nothing changes. You keep giving, not because they deserve it, but because you're afraid of what it means to stop. Afraid to be alone, afraid to start over, afraid that all the time, all the love, all the effort will have been for nothing. So you stay, half-hearted, half alive, telling yourself maybe next week it'll feel different. But weeks turn into months, and slowly your self-respect begins to rot. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" But there's something even more corrosive than anger: self-abandonment. Every time you accept less than you deserve, you teach your soul that it doesn't matter. You normalize neglect. You swallow your needs and call it strength. That's not stoicism. That's self-neglect with good branding. Real strength isn't staying in what breaks you. It's walking away with grace, even when your heart is still holding on, even when there's no one waiting on the other side, even when your voice shakes and your legs feel weak, because choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. So ask yourself, if your best friend came to you and described your relationship exactly as it is, would you tell them to stay? If the answer is no, then you already know. And maybe you've known for a long time.